There's been a bill proposed to try to take back control of the tariff process from the executive branch. The White House has threatened to veto it. So even if it were to pass, I don't think that that bill would become law.
Yes.
But the fact that you have multiple Republicans now willing to put their names on that sort of legislation tells you that the pushback is real, and the White House is hearing more and more.
Molly Ball, just on this. How do you read the mood in the White House right now about the European Union? We saw Donald Trump on his presidential plane, Air Force One, talking about the European Union having been formed for the purpose of doing down the United States, which is a novel interpretation of the European Union, which most people would say was formed partly for the purpose of avoiding a repetition of World War II in its origins. But Georgia Maloney, she's going to be a popular figure there, Molly.
Yeah, I think it's correct to say that she's one of the most aligned or best able to communicate with the White House. But certainly the president has not been a fan of the EU. I mean, I think you saw signs of that in the leaked Signal chat and the comments made by J.D. Vance and, of course, his public comments as well. No fan of either the domestic politics of a lot of the European countries or of the EU writ large. So, I think that within the White House, that is pretty much the attitude. I think they're being truthful about that, and so I think there's been a lot of drama in the transatlantic alliance since the beginning of this administration, and it's all to some extent intentional. It's not a mistake that they've sought to change the terms of that relationship, sought to unsettle some of these longstanding alliances, not been big fans of NATO either. So I think this administration's rhetoric has been pretty consistent in all of these things.
The other world leader who Carolyn Leavitt said would be coming to the White House is the president of El Salvador to discuss prison cooperation. And I just wanted to ask Molly, because there was a question later on in the press conference about comments that Trump has made about the possibility of deporting American citizens, not illegal migrants, not foreign nationals who are accused of crimes there, but but American citizens, deporting them to foreign prisons, potentially El Salvador. And she seemed quite upbeat about that as a prospect. Obviously, of course, she stressed that it would only be Americans who were convicted of the absolute worst crimes. I think the whole point of the rule of law is that people get legal rights rather than it being the administration who gets to decide sort of en masse, you don't get your citizen rights anymore. And I was just wondering from Molly's perspective, how shocking is that as a US citizen to hear that being discussed in such a light-hearted manner, given that is a sort of direct attack on the Constitution?
I think as with so many things that this administration does, it falls in the category of sort of shocking but not surprising. This is something that they've been promising to do, I think, from the beginning, something they've been pretty aggressive about just in terms of deportations in general. And the attitude has very much been, and this has been the case even in court in the legal filings and arguments made by the administration, that they have the right to target for deportation and to deport basically anybody that they want to. They don't really have to explain themselves. We've seen them, repeatedly say that the determination of the administration when it comes to, say, the criminality of someone that they've targeted is enough. And they've declined to provide proof of things like national security concerns. And they had a victory in court yesterday when the Supreme Court allowed them to continue to utilize this law, the Alien Enemies Act from the 19th century, as the pretext for some of these deportations. However,
but is there not a distinction with US citizens and foreign citizens? Is that not a distinction, or is that not relevant to this debate?
Well, I think I think in the eyes of a court, there is a distinction. I think what I'm saying is, in the eyes of this administration, they have the right to do sort of whatever they want to do, and they've sort of dared the courts to stop them. And so the Supreme Court did say that there is an absolute right of due process in all of these proceedings. And so the administration is going to be pressed to provide more proof going forward. And yes, according to the letter of the law, citizens do have the rights of citizenship and should not be subject to deportation to foreign countries. But this administration is pushing a maximalist interpretation, in some cases an exotic interpretation, or one that relies on, laws that have been on the books but haven't been utilized ever in this way or haven't been utilized in a very long time. And what they're trying to do is just put so many things in motion and act as aggressively as possible that if they do get set back by the courts, they still feel that they've made progress in the direction that they're aiming for.
Okay, Seb.
While we're here, sorry, I don't want this to turn into an Ask Molly session, but she's written, by the way, a fantastic biography of Nancy Pelosi, which for British listeners, if you haven't found it, you should definitely check it out. It's a great insight to a fascinating American politician. But Molly, with your kind of Capitol Hill hat on, I was really interested by what Caroline Levitt said about passing the tax cut bill, because clearly the Trump administration is trying to have the yin and yang of this by waging the tariffs and the trade war to try and get better deals, but then also passing tax cuts to try and pump up the American economy and get things going again. What are the prospects of that? And what is the general mood on Capitol Hill to this? Because from my time when I worked in DC, the stuff we're seeing on tariffs is so anathema to the traditional Republican mindset. It still boggles my mind that we hear nothing from Republican senators or congressmen about the kind of actions we're seeing from the White House.
Well, thank you so much for promoting my book, The Check's in the Mail.
It's on the house, Molly.
But, we have started to hear, even publicly, even with their names on it, some expressions of concern and even outright opposition to what this administration is doing on tariffs from Republican members of Congress. I would say that that first of all, this is a different Republican Congress than it was 8 years ago. This is no longer the party of Paul Ryan. It's no longer the party of Ronald Reagan, and the appetite for sort of libertarian, laissez-faire economics, it has been dramatically reduced because of the way that Trump has remade the party in line with his instincts toward things like protectionism. So that's one factor. But you still do have a Republican Congress that's pretty divided when it comes to economic policy, along the lines of what Trump wants versus what conservatives have traditionally advocated. And so, for example, Trump's nominee for U.S. Trade Representative was on Capitol Hill for a confirmation hearing this morning, and he got pressed very hard by Republican senators to lay out an end game to the trade war, to articulate a goal for what this administration was trying to do on trade, and he was somewhat evasive, and you could tell that some of these Republicans were not satisfied by his answers, because he does come much more from the pro-tariff school of thought, and there are still quite a lot of Republicans, especially in the Senate, where they tend to serve longer terms and have more history with the party. There is a lot of heartburn. We've heard a lot of heartburn from, farm state representatives who are concerned about the effects of the tariffs. Republicans are, of course, quite sensitive to the palpitations of the business community, which is very concerned, not to say panicked, about what's happening in the markets and what's happening potentially to their supply chains. So, and there's been a bill proposed to try to take back control of the tariff process from the executive branch. The White House has threatened to veto it. So even if it were to pass, I don't think that bill would become law.
Yes.
But the fact that you have multiple Republicans now willing to put their names on that sort of legislation tells you that the pushback is real, and the White House is hearing more and more. And just to circle back to the main action on Capitol Hill, the tax cuts, as you say, this is basically consumed both houses of Congress. It's the only thing they're really working on all year, and the trade war has really thrown a wrench in it. It was already very difficult because of the narrow margins that they have and because of how much they're trying to put in this bill. And now the fact that the economic picture is darkening and the political picture is darkening is making it that much harder for all of these Republicans to stand with the White House as they encourage them to stay the course and to take the pain.